Stalin, 60 million white people killed by white people. Just if you want some numbers. Yeah. Hitler, however many. Okay. If you're really under the impression that white people haven't done a sterling job of kicking the living out of white people for like centuries.
Let's hear what you're saying. Yeah. There was a systematic understanding that we are the superior civilization.
Yeah, and it was misguided. When people can exploit other people, they'll keep trying to do it. So if you remove the race excuse, they come up with another
Tony,
one. They'll probably come up with, guess what? It's not about race. They're not so well educated.
Tony,
and they'd be right.
Why did they not do that to other white people then? Why only the black man? Why the Indians? I don't accept the legitimacy of Pakistan.
Yeah.
He said, I accept the reality of it.
Yeah.
So he didn't accept the fact that this was somehow acceptable. In fact, it was unacceptable to him.
Ethically unacceptable,
Yeah.
but pragmatically acceptable.
But he said that we are where we are.
Yeah.
Right? Now, do I accept the right of Israel and what the skullduggery that went on with the United Nations to, in effect, remove hundreds of thousands of people from their land and give it to somebody else?
No, you don't.
Many of whom were actually European and are not even Semitic, quite frankly. In fact, if you look at and do a bit of research, by the way, you'll be surprised that even Benjamin Netanyahu, that's not his real name. They all have Polish names and they all have European names. They don't even come from that land. So I don't accept the legitimacy of what happened. But I accept the fact that the reality of it, that they're there. What are you going to do?
Well, you could go to war.
You can go to war. You can go to endless war.
Yeah.
Or
against, as I said, people who have nuclear weapons.
Right.
And it raises the question, what's going to happen to the nukes?
And what's going to happen to potentially other countries that may get nukes as well, like Pakistan has nukes, for example, right? So I said to you that the reality then is that the people themselves can discuss what they feel is a fair and just solution, which at the moment seems to be that the Palestinian people predominantly are prepared for a two-state solution with 1967 borders. Now, do I think that this is a legitimate right of Israel to retain all that land, i.e.
No, I know you don't.
I don't.
We've covered that.
Right,
yeah?
exactly.
You think it's unethical but pragmatically necessary.
Right, exactly.
Yeah? I'm in I think, a similar place.
Yeah.
Right? My reason why I think it may be slightly more ethical than you do pivoted on the statute of limitations, where I'm just asking the question, at what point does history become history?
Yeah.
As a general question.
Yeah.
I mean, decouple it from the Israeli-Gaza thing and all of that. Just ask the theoretical question, at what point in human history does it become history? And I'd like to hear people's answers. And you came up with what I thought was an interesting answer I hadn't heard, because I've rooted it in living memory, okay? That seems to be objectively quantifiable, and I can substantiate it. It's got some traction. You came up with the idea that immediately after World War II,
Yes.
everybody sat down, and having failed with the League of Nations after World War I, they went, World War II, we're going to have year zero, and from here on in, we're going to have codes of international law. So we should treat effectively 1945 as being ground zero for new international law.
Right, so basically that was that genocide was no longer going to be allowed. The targeting of civilians was no longer going to be allowed. The taking of land and occupying it through war was no longer going to be allowed.
Yeah.
And in fact, what we've seen since then is Israel effectively breaking all of those laws that were set up.
Who else are you aware of who's advocated that argument?
What argument, sorry?
Your argument, that idea.
I think pretty much most people, I think, have agreed.
I haven't heard it anywhere that
I think
we should treat events before 1945 according to one ethical and legal standard, and events after.
It's not about ethical or moral. It's not.
It is to me.
Well, no, because look, the United Nations deciding what they decided does not suddenly make an action immoral. And it was somehow moral before.
No, I wasn't arguing that. I'm saying it's a moral question being addressed.
Yes.
Therefore, whatever the ruling is has moral bearing, ethical bearing.
I understand. I understand. But I'm saying that for me, it's not a question of morality, because for me, as a believer of God, I believe in objective morality coming from God Almighty. So theft of another person's land and property, regardless of 45, 1910. or year 50, whatever it might be, for me it's still wrong. It's still theft. It's still
At what point in history? I'm asking the
No,
question.
so I'm saying-
At what point in history
Right.
does the thing that was wrong become the thing which, although in the history
it becomes
books we say-
unacceptable.
yeah. At what point do we go? We know a bad thing happened,
Yes.
but we're going to stop going on.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And that we're going to have consequences for people that now break these, let's say, universally accepted rules
Right.
and
So
laws.
you made that 1945.
Yeah, well, when was the United Nations formed?
Okay, I'm not
46,
hearing.
47?
I'm not hearing anybody just
Yeah.
diving in with that, and I think it's a better idea
Yeah.
than the idea I'm hearing at the moment. The
Yeah.
idea I'm hearing at the moment
So
is we don't
let
want to
me
think about
let me qualify that. So I'm not saying that is a sign of morality or what's right or wrong. I'm saying from a global perspective, since that's what the globe has agreed upon.
I understand. I'm not confused.
Yeah,
on that
so
point,
they
okay?
should then
We're arbitrating an ethical
Yeah.
question. We're
Yeah.
using international legislation
Right.
to do it.
So what
and
I'm-
we're trying to come up with an answer
Yes.
which is at least not the worst ethical answer.
Yeah, so what I'm
yeah?
saying is that at least don't be hypocritical in establishing a rule of law that now the powerful nations of the world
Yeah.
flaunt whenever they want to. If it's their buddy doing it, their ally doing it, then it's fine.
Sure.
But if it's a brown man or a black man doing it,
You're bringing in the
well,
race again.
I'm telling you, it's 100%.
To
Absolutely.
me, it's like when the Jews play the anti-Semitic card. It's a bit easy and it feels a
Well,
bit cheap.
I can qualify it.
Well, I mean, do you really think that?
I believe that a
You
lot
really
of
think this is motivated by something as simple as racism, as opposed to just not caring about other people because it's not in my backyard?
I'll tell you why I do believe that.
This is a shame. Go on.
I'll tell you why. I'll qualify it with evidence.
Okay. Go on.
You have Ukraine,
Yeah.
blonde, blue-eyed people being bombed by other blonde, blue-eyed people.
Yeah.
People are opening their homes to come and live with them.
Yeah.
They're welcome, open hands.
Yeah.
Welcome a Ukrainian family to come and live with you.
Well,
Right now, hold on a second.
you might be overstating the degree of hospitality.
Well, I think
that's
it was.
being offered, but
There
carry
were
on.
many people who did say that on social media and actually did do that.
Yeah, but it's,
Okay,
it's not in droves.
Well, okay, many. But when in Rwanda you have a genocide happening,
Yeah.
no one opened their doors to a black person here to help them to come here.
Probably somebody did.
Now, why I believe it is racial, and I'll tell you,
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right, Tony,
I'll tell you why I feel, Tony, it is racial. Let me ask you a question, Tony.
Yeah.
During apartheid in South Africa,
Actually, sorry, no offense. I think you might be.
during
not.
Tony's now the cameraman,
No, I'm,
Yeah, yeah,
the
he's aware
director.
of the camera.
I'm just joking. I'm just
I'm a
joking.
compulsive organizer. Sorry.
That's good,
Carry on.
Tony.
Yeah.
During the oppression of the black people in South Africa during apartheid,
Yeah.
which was racist, right? A racist law. One rule for the black man, one rule for the white
I
man.
get it, but you're not going to like this. I don't think the most constructive way to look at it is as being racist. I think it was the exploitation of people without power by people with power, and it was easy to categorize them by skin color because it's a simplistic thing. But I don't think that's the same as something being motivated by going, if you are a particular racial group,
Did
I'm
the
coming to
South
you.
African-
I think it was just an easy way of creating that
Did
partition
the
so
South
you could exploit people.
Okay, did the South African white man
Yeah.
see the black man as inferior to him?
Yeah, but it would be racist if he did it because he thought that he was inferior because he was black.
What was the other
But they
reason?
did-
Okay, actually, a chunk of them did.
Right,
I get
okay,
it.
okay.
Okay.
So now let me ask you a question.
But if they'd been
No.
the same colour, they'd still have exploited
Well,
them.
well,
is my point.
well,
I think effectively
well,
they had the upper hand of power, and if they'd been white slaves instead
well-
of black, I think they would have done.
Well,
the same
Tony, that's an
thing.
assumption, with all
I
due
know it's an
respect.
assumption,
And
but
it's not
you
based on
can't-
evidence.
Well, it couldn't be because it's an
I
assumption.
understand.
So, okay.
I understand.
But psychologically,
but
that
what I'm
rings true
talking
to me.
about is not an assumption. I'm talking about the reality on the ground.
Well, then we can't explore any
No,
other possibilities
No,
apart
no.
from what physically happens.
Right. So
Which
I think we should assess
We should
it
do
because
hypotheticals as
well, we should assess it to how it was, not how we might how it might have been different had it been a different race. I don't think that's helpful.
Why not? I'm trying to work out the psychology there.
Yeah,
I think
there was fundamentally racism. Yes.
Okay.
The black man
I'm
was
not-
inferior.
I'm not saying racism isn't in there. I think in a lot of the debates that are happening now about everything, people have become it's more of a postmodern thing, this race. race, identity politics thing, right? And it's creating less high quality debates.
But Tony,
and I think if you come at it from the psychology more of people with power, people without power, you get a better lens on what's going on.
Tony, I'll tell you what, my position is stronger. Because I can actually quote what the white man was saying about the black man.
Sure.
I can actually show the actions of the white man towards the black
I'm not
man.
saying there wasn't racism in that.
Right.
No.
Now, what my question is a wider question to that,
Go on.
which is that now anybody who supported the apartheid of the black African, South African,
Yeah.
and supported the white supremacist ideology,
Yeah.
would that make them racist?
It depends on their motive. You have to look at the individual person.
I would argue that it does.
I would argue. I'm sure that some of the people who supported it did it because of racism. Some of them may not have given the monkeys about racism.
I would say most.
Okay, some of them may have just found it politically expedient to support the powerful entity, which in return would support them.
Yes.
Now, and the fact that the people were black or whatever race they were wasn't the issue. It was a matter of just cozying up to the powerful elite in South Africa. People will be motivated by power more than anything else.
So basically, what you're saying is that
There's multiple motives.
despite there being a racist ideology,
Yeah.
despite it being fundamentally because the black man is inferior to the white man, therefore the white man has a right to rule over the black man and take his
Which is a bogus
resources
philosophy.
because he's stronger.
Which is a bogus philosophy.
Well, what I'm saying to you is, anybody then who supports that philosophy, that ideology,
Anybody who supports the ideology that one race is fundamentally superior to another is racist.
right? Okay,
Okay, I haven't got
I
an
agree.
argument with
I
that.
agree. I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Now that's exactly what's happening in Israel.
But I believe in South Africa, for the most part, they were using the race as an excuse just to exploit people.
No, but
it was powerful people exploiting
But
people.
I think Tony, what you're doing is you're perhaps softening.
No, it's just no. My attack is more brutal.
I think no, but I'll tell you why, Tony. Because I can only go by not what I think they might have been thinking or what they might have been doing. I can only go by what they actually said.
Why would you believe everything these racists say?
And what they actually did.
But why would you believe everything they say?
Well, because if somebody says, I hate all black people.
Okay, well, I'll go by what Hitler says.
Yeah.
Hitler went, I'm trying to create, we are the super race. No, you're not the super race. I know he said it, but he was wrong.
Clearly, he was wrong.
Right.
But I'm saying that he's
equally,
but
the
I'm not-
racists in South
but I'm
Africa,
not,
just because
but I'm not
they
going
say-
to start analysing whether Hitler was racist or supremacist or not. I'm going to say, you know what, he probably was, because he said the things and he did the things to back up what he said.
We may have to agree to disagree. I
Anyway.
think it is more. I think it's more constructive. Okay, I think you can look at things from multiple directions, and you should. If you want to look at, say, South Africa from the point of view of racism, yes, do it, and you have good points. I'm not saying it wasn't racist.
And I think the same thing applies to Israel.
Simultaneously, you want to look at the psych. Well, I actually prefer discussing South Africa because there's a motive for this, and we can discuss the underlying issues. I think if you look at South Africa, though, from the point of view of power dynamics, you get almost a more cogent idea. You get a pattern where people of power wanted to exploit people with less power, and then they rationalised it in their own mind using racist ideology. But actually, they just invented that to rationalise their exploitation.
But yet they didn't
So
do that to
It was
their-
a tool. It wasn't the cause. It was a symptom. It was a way of hiding from what they were doing. That was just exploitation.
But Tony,
You're whitewashing history.
yeah.
Why am I whitewashing history? I'm trying to dig into the psychology of powerful people exploiting people without power.
The assumption in the psychology wasn't based upon appearances. Is flawed. So the assumption that the way that people were treated wasn't based upon appearances goes against.
I didn't say that.
But that's what it was.
I didn't say that.
So if you're going across, this is a black person and I'm a white person, that's based upon appearances.
I'm not saying they weren't doing that. I understand they were doing that. I'm saying that even if, my guess is, that even if they didn't have a skin distinction, they would have made another distinction because their primary motive, I'm interested in the psychology of bad people, and the apartheid government of South Africa were bad people, right? And I want to really understand what goes on so you can change it, so you don't keep falling into the trap. And I think it can be oversimplistic to get into this identity politics framework of constantly talking about race. The psychology of those people, I think, was they wanted power, they wanted to exploit people, and they invented reasons to do it. I think that speaks to their deepest motive. Their deepest motive was, I want to keep power.
But Tony, what are you
exploit
basing
people.
that upon?
My understanding of human psychology and
So
power
this is
dynamics.
so the point is that the only way you're going to understand what their
Why is that counterfactual?
I'm telling you. So the only way you can understand the motivations of the people who did these things is to see what they expressed as their reasons for doing these things.
But that assumes that I should take. We've already agreed that these people are culpable and reprehensible. So why should I suddenly take their word for it? Usually when a person does something bad, they don't realise they're the bad person, okay? This is my understanding. I mean, this seems to be revealed in most religions, most psychology. Bad people
They don't understand they're doing
bad
something
people
bad.
don't know they're doing bad things. Bad people hide it from themselves. They rationalise their behaviour. They don't sit there and go, I'm the bad guy, no, I'm the bad guy. They paint themselves somehow as the legitimate guy and the good guy. And I'm interested in how they kid themselves of this so that I can disavow them of the illusion. They'll realise they're the bad guys and stop being it. I'm aiming deep, but it's ambitious.
But the way that you do, the way to get an authentic...
Why are we right next to them? It doesn't make any sense. Seriously.
The way to
I'm
get
a
an
logical guy. Shall we just move a little bit?
Ben, we're going to move a bit, yeah?
Yeah? Should we just move a bit? So we're not going to move here.
Brother, sorry, can we just ask you to, if you don't mind, we're going to just come here. Is that all right? Just that they're making too much noise there. Yeah. Okay, we'll finish the discussion.
Right. Look, I know it's an unconventional view. I'm just trying to dig deeper. I'm not saying that your analysis of racism in South Africa isn't accurate. I think it is. I just think it's more surface. I mean, it's important, but I think if you can dig even deeper into the psychology of evil, if you dig into the idea that evil people tend not to realise they're being evil, and they invent ideas such as race and whatever else they can come up with to justify their bad behaviour. I just want to factor that in as well. You can have both things. You can have the racist thing and what I'm saying.
I think actually taking away the reasons that people give for why they're doing what they're doing and stepping back and making it sort of less clear and more general, like this is just a power dynamic.
I didn't say it's not just, but that's an element of it.
There's always an element of power dynamic.
Right.
It doesn't give us any information.
Really? Why wouldn't the power dynamic give you information?
Because what you need, the information you need is what was the motivations behind this disparity? Where did it come from?
And I would, right, and I think the acquisition of power is part of that motivation.
Yeah, but that doesn't tell us anything.
It came from philosophy and ideology.
I think
that was
imprinted
within that group of people that they were superior.
Yeah, it came from
superior to the black man.
Right.
And so, see, Tony, what? Look, the reality here is.
I love it when people say the reality is here.
Because I'm agreeing with you partly as well.
Okay.
That there may be other factors that also influence the overarching factor of race.
Right.
But all we can actually sensibly go by is the words they use to justify the actions, and then the actions themselves.
Why? Why can't I go by my entire understanding of
because then
human nature?
what you're doing is therefore you're assessing something outside of those two things that are witnessed, observable, and can be interpreted to something that's completely, I would say, subjective. It has no evidence to back up.
That's
the point.
The very simple empirical evidence is the people doing this are objectively people. That's an empirical fact. And people, I believe, and you believe, have a nature. They're not blank slates. Okay? Now, as long as you don't believe human beings are blank slates and you believe they do have a hardwired nature, and we all do, we may disagree as to what that nature is, but we believe it's there. I want to know how that hardwired nature is tapping into this motivation. I'm not saying that in denial of your points about race. I'd want to do it in conjunction.
If you're not denying it, then it is fundamentally built on racism. Then.
No, I'm saying.
You're not saying it's
I'm saying
you're
that
not denying this as being the
if you remove the racism element from that equation,
why should you? That's
how you test it. I'm saying if the entire thing was simply down to racism, in other words, there were some white people who had a genuine belief that black people were inferior, and as that's how they behaved, then if you remove that racist belief, they wouldn't have continued to try and behave the way they were. My suspicion, and you can't discount this, and it's consistent with a view of hardwired human nature, is that when people can exploit other people, they'll keep trying to do it. So if you remove the race excuse, they come up with another
Tony,
one. They'll probably come up with, guess what? It's not about race. They're not so well educated.
Tony,
and they'd be right.
Why did they not do that to other white people then? Why only the black man? Why the Indians? Why the Aborigines? Why the indigenous populations in America?
Because the history.
Why was there not this mass genocidal culling of other white neighbours around them?
Just quote some Winston Churchill.
Why only the black man? Why only the brown man?
Oh, really? You think that?
Well, answer the question.
You don't think the white people have exploited white people at all?
I'm not saying that. That's
well,
not what I
it's
said.
kind of implied.
No, I said
not on a systematic level.
Exactly.
Okay, so hang on.
So let me just put this quite clearly.
Just for the record, Stalin, 60 million white people killed by white people. Just if you want some numbers. Yeah? Hitler, however many. Okay? If you're really under the impression that white people haven't done a sterling job of kicking the living out of white people for like centuries.
Let's hear what you're saying. There was a systematic understanding that we are the superior civilization.
Yeah, and it was misguided.
We agree.
Because either you can point to biblical, that the people of Ham were cursed, or you can point to Darwinian, the origin of the species, how he categorized the different evolved states of different human beings that he saw. He clearly categorized the white man as the most evolved, and then there was this hierarchy of lesser evolved humans, subhuman species. Maybe he didn't use that phrase. This is where even in the secular mindset, when they were when we had this explosion of traveling to different parts of the world. And from the 1490s onwards, then what you saw was people being subjugated.
I'm not disputing any of that.
Because of an understanding of either religious superiority or a civilizational or racial superiority.
I'm not trying to fly the flag for imperialism.
I'm not saying that you are, but what I'm saying is to remove those things as a factor.
That's how I feel. All I'm trying to say is I think you get a richer understanding of the picture if you see it as a multivariance equation with multiple motives. That's all I'm saying. Okay?
I understand.
And I think to argue that you can ignore the power dynamic as a thing.
I didn't say ignore the power.
Okay, I got the feeling that if you play it back, there was an implication that you're just talking about power. No, I'm talking about power. Power is not adjusting. Power will be the backbone of the entire exploitation equation. And I think people who want to exploit other people will make up whatever excuse they can. And if they can sell you a really half-assed idea that a lot of people will buy, like race, they'll do it. If that one fails, they'll think up another half-assed idea like education, or else they'll think up another half-assed idea like, I don't know, IQ, or whatever it is. But the common denominator in all of these exploitative scenarios is that people want to exploit a position of power. And I just want to be allowed to factor that into the equation as well while we're talking about race.
You can.
Because I don't want to just do identity politics and become woke.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Is that reasonable?
So partially.
Okay, partially reasonable is good.
So I'm glad you clarified that. It's
you're not saying anything important, so he's taking it away.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. He only does
I'm glad you're trying to create. Look, you are two of the only people here who I think we get a high quality of discussion with. The last one we had about politics. I'm just trying to head a bit broader and deeper. Okay?
I think, look, Tony, I think the wider point is quite simple, I think, which is that you've raised Stalin, you've raised other people, horrible wars that happened,
Which was clearly not racially motivated.
Well, you could argue that, right? And I agree, I'd accept that.
Okay.
Right? Okay. But the point here is that you have a systematic genocide of a entire ethnic group
that persists to this day. I would say
that I would agree with you, right?
And I think
and because Stalin did not say, "I'm doing it because your race is inferior." Right. Stalin did it. His intentions were clear. Why he was doing was clear. So I would not attribute to Stalin, "Oh no, he did it because he was a racist."
Good.
Because Stalin did it for his reasons,
he was a power monger,
which he specified. Similarly, the ones that went into Africa and Asia, they clearly specified that these are a less evolved people, a less human people, an inferior people.
Why did they do that?
No, but Tony, the why comes afterwards.
Okay, well,
The analysis of the why comes afterwards. What is apparent now is that they said that they've gone in because these are inferior people, and yes, I agree.
I'm not disputing anything.
They had resources they wanted to steal. They were greedy. But
if they hadn't been able to concoct an excuse for why they were inferior people, I think they'd have gone in and stolen the resources anyway.
Well, that's an assumption.
Because it's an assumption,
Right.
but it may be a legitimate.
Maybe right, maybe wrong.
Thank you. So just
Okay.
all I'm saying is, Abba,
that's fine.
Please give me the space.
That's fine.
So when we have these discussions, just give the space to explore the potential of that assumption that maybe the primary motive, because motive is important,
Yes.
was I want to steal. Maybe I only said maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, or at least some of the motive was going. Ooh. We'd like your natural resources.
Some of the motive, of course.
We'd like
we
your
agree.
natural resources.
So we agree
okay?
on that.
Now, if I wanted to take your natural resources, I need to rationalise to myself and other people on what basis I can do that. I know. Why don't I come up with an argument and base some pseudoscience around the idea that I'm racially superior to you, which justifies me exploiting you, so I can make your resources. That means the primary motive.
So then
that would mean that a key part of the motive and dynamics of what happened, although it would superficially appear to be racism, that was actually, to some extent, a facade. The deeper and darker motive was, I want to steal from you. I've got a better military and I've got the equipment. I just want to explore
so
that
basically our disagreement then is,
Yeah.
in terms of, let's say, the level of racism as opposed to just greed.
Right, they're both at play.
Yeah. I'm not saying they're not.
Good, that's all.
But I'm saying our level of disagreement. However, our level of disagreement is: did race play a significant part?
Race played a part, but
No, a part is different from a significant part, which allowed and facilitated the massacre and the genocide and the theft.
I think they were using it as an excuse.
Well, excuse or no excuse?
No,
was it a major reason or not?
As a point of fact, it was voiced as being that. Okay, but whether or they were being honest about their motive, I think is more open to question. Because if I want to deconstruct these guys and take them apart so they don't keep doing it, I've got to unplug their psychology. Now, the difference between them actually believing in racial superiority, as opposed to thinking, well, it's a convenient tool I can brainwash people with so I can get what I want, those are two different psychological models. I just want to explore both in tandem. Because understanding which one's at play will affect how you deal with the problem.
This type of argumentation attempts to absolve.
I'm not trying to absolve them at all. I'm condemning them as being greedy.
But let me finish my sentence, guys.
Sorry.
So this type of argumentation, what it does is whether you agree with it or not, is absolves people of this racist perspectives and viewpoints. By removing it because what you're saying is it was there, but it was an excuse. That's not what they really believe. It was really about power.
It wasn't their real motivation.
The reality is this is exactly what they believe, and it was used as the primary motivation to go and exploit these people because they are lesser. They don't know what's good for themselves.
Well, then we have different ethics because to me, you're saying I'm trying to remove the racist thing and making them somehow getting them off the hook.
Not remove.
Absolving them of it.
You're saying I'm
this is not the reason why.
Okay, you see that I'm trying to absolve them of the racist thing. I think what I'm doing is scratching the surface of the racist thing and accusing them of something even more appalling. So it's not that I'm letting them off the ethical hook. I'm trying to actually nail them down.
So you think more appalling than believing your fellow man is subhuman and you can go and kill him is worse,
I think,
than stealing his resources?
No, I think believing, because racism is a belief system. I think believing that your fellow human is a lesser human is a bad thing, terrible thing.
Yes.
But I think actually going out, stealing stuff and killing people, not in practice, not just as a belief system, is even worse.
Well, I would put the killing part with the racism.
Well, it's not an inherent
and the stealing part I would put separately.
It's not an inherent part of being racist. You just believe people are inferior.
Well,
that's a belief system, and I think they used it to rationalise the genuinely worse behaviour of actually killing and actually stealing.
Tony,
so I just want to keep my eye on the
Tony,
ball.
would you say that a lot of what they did had a large part, at least, to play with the fact that they thought that this race was inferior to themselves?
I think they conned themselves into believing it because
fine.
it was convenient.
The con themselves is the absolving. You're not giving these human people the agency, the decency, the intellect to understand why they are doing the things that they are doing. You're saying that they had deluded themselves, they conned themselves, they weren't really aware of.
They were fooled, they were tricked almost.
You
That's what I'm
understand?
saying.
Because either they were delusional,
And I'm
and
saying
they
that that's
didn't
not the
know,
case.
and they conned themselves, or they knew what they were doing, and they knew the words that were coming out of their mouth, and they were doing the things that they were doing. If you say that they were, they had convinced themselves incorrectly, you're infantilizing their intentions.
No, I'm not, because I'm making it more insidious. I'm making it more insidious. I'm saying that they are rationalizing it because they have an even deeper, darker motive, which is they're going to get those natural resources from those people one way or another. What myth can I tell myself to make it seem acceptable to myself and other people? But the really dark thing they're doing is the theft, the acquisition, and the murder. So I just want to keep my eye on the ball.
I would say
because
that
if they think of a different reason, which is
Tony,
racism,
I think you're miscategorizing things, and you're lumping murder with the theft.
And I did both.
And I would say that the murder is part of the racist ideology. So I would say racism and the subjugation and oppression and the mass killing, mass murdering of a people is one thing, and the theft is another. And that's why I would say that the more significant of the two ills, as it were, is the racism which justified the mass murder and the mass killing.
I don't know how else to put it. You guys are sounding to me very postmodern, and you're into identity politics. I want to get away from that. I thought we were anchored.
Just calling a spade a spade.
I know, but it's ending up with this. I think oversimplified camp of this tribe, that tribe, identity politics.
No,
and blank slate theory, and I'm absolutely not in that world.
But we aren't a blank slate.
But you guys aren't. You believe in a fitra.
Yeah,
you believe
we're not a blank slate.
I know you're not, and I'm not blank slate.
Yeah.
This is our common ground.
Yeah.
We believe that there is hardwired human nature. Yeah.
But then
we believe that although your environment affects you, it doesn't affect you like a blank slate where it irrevocably molds you one way or another. We believe that there are a priori elements to human nature which it interacts with. So you're a synthesis of nature and nurture.
So what corrupts this innate state?
Huh?
What corrupts the innate state?
Well, the innate state is corrupted in and of itself because you're pulled in different directions. You're pulled between your demons and your angels, your better choices and your worse choices. That's the hardwiring of the human
your experiences
condition.
within your society, the things you learn, your interactions, the ideas you absorb and
they
internalize.
inform the context within which you conduct that struggle. But the struggle between good and evil is always hardwired.
Absolutely. So the things that people were absorbing at that time, in the late 17th, 18th century, was Darwin's theory of evolution, the categorization of different racial elements that you see around the world as different subspecies of human beings, and then
which is not inherent to Darwinism.
Sure, it's not inherent to Darwinism, but the concept that these people are inferior from a secular perspective, even if you don't even go down the religious aspect, because we already spoke about Ham being sort of the cursed one of the children of
that may not have been me. But.
Not you, but I'm just saying that there were other ways of doing this.
Yeah.
And those were the things that informed the people. And this is where stepping on an ant doesn't bother you morally, because it's not considered to be of the same intrinsic value as yourself or another human being. And therefore taking and killing and pillaging from a lesser race has a removal of moral culpability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why it's a convenient ideology to embrace if
but
you're
look at
actually a greedy, murdering power monger. And that's my accusation.
It's not that.
In South Africa, they were being greedy, murdering power mongers. And you seem to think that's me somehow letting them off the hook.
Look at the justification
I don't know any
that
other way to
Churchill
do it. You actually think racism is worse than being a murderer, a thief, and greedy.
No, you're not one saying.
I think
I'm saying
racism.
I'm saying racism leads to...
Racism is just a stupid, bad idea.
Racism leads to all of those things you mentioned.
It can do.
It leads to it.
But then you're making it the prime mover. I'm making human nature be the prime mover.
Yes, but this is where...
So you're going blank slate. I'm going human nature. Human nature, I think, will always be tempted by the opportunity to exploit. I'm not saying we'll always choose to do it, but the option will be there. That's the darker side of human nature. Yeah?
Tony, I think what you're missing the point here is that I agree the human condition is greed. It's
on the menu.
It's always on the menu.
Right.
The point that we're trying to make.
Oh, okay.
No. The point that we're trying to make. The point that we're trying to make here. The point that we're trying to make here. What facilitates, justifies, expediates such core desires to covet materials, what is the thing that allows you,
The smoke screen.
facilitates you.
To me, it's
It's not smoke screen. It facilitates it.
Yeah, the smoke screen
facilitates-
lets you not be seen what
No.
you're really doing.
No. I wouldn't say it's a smoke screen. I would say, as Imran said, it becomes and this is why, look, when Churchill said, "I do not accept that wrong was done to the black in Australia
Yeah.
or the indigenous American," he argues a superior race, a more refined race, a more
Worldly wise.
race has taken over or whatever,
Well, if
an
he-
inferior
if
race.
he argued that, I condemn it, and that's racist.
But what I'm trying to say to you is, it's precisely because the people in the mass believed such things
Yeah.
that then justified the level of brutality,
Yeah.
the wholesale killing and genocide.
I'm not in denial. I agree with you.
So all we're saying to you, Tony,
Yes.
is therefore it appears
Yeah.
that the primary facilitator is that fundamental, foundational
Yeah.
belief that the black man is inferior to me and the white man,
Yeah.
which is racism.
Can I return? Right. So I think the key word in what Abbas just said is the word appears. Yes, it absolutely appears that way. But seeing as Abbas in his analysis is looking for what he says, and I agree, should be the fundamental driving force, I think the fundamental driving force, as we would learn from looking at the world's religions and psychology, including the Quran, I believe, would be that we come hardwired with a darker nature we have to grapple with. And if I look at the first fundamental cause of the exploitations you're talking about, it is in human nature itself. And if we mask our understanding, if we hide from that in our own nature and other people's nature and mask it behind lesser problems like racism, and racism is a problem, no question, we'll miss the ball. We won't really solve the problem. We'll only deal with surface issues instead of
I'll tell you why you're
bedrock
wrong,
issues.
Tony, on this point.